This year, my garden taught me things no book ever could. Some plants got every advantage I could give them and still failed. They sulked, dropped their flowers, got eaten alive, or just sat there looking healthy while producing almost nothing. And other plants? They took off like I gave them rocket fuel. They produced more than I could eat and made the whole garden look like I knew exactly what I was doing, even on the weeks when I didn't. Today, I am giving you the full, honest report. The 5 best plants in my garden this year, the 5 biggest disappointments, and for every single one, the real lesson it left behind. Stay with me to the end, because the last plant on the worst list is one almost every American gardener has tried, and almost nobody explains clearly why it keeps failing them. Welcome to Nature and Green Focus. Let's get into it. Every season ends the same way for me. The harvest is in, the beds are winding down, and I come outside with coffee and think, okay, what actually happened this year? Because gardening does not let you fake the results. You either grew food or you didn't. The soil shows you exactly where you got it right and exactly where you got it wrong. This year, I grew across containers, raised beds, and in-ground space. Some experiments were the best decisions I made all season. Some cost me time and bed space I won't give away again. And for every failure, the blame belongs to the gardener, not the plant. Wrong timing, wrong location, wrong expectations. That is where failures start, and that is where the learning is. If you are new here, this is what Nature and Green Focus is about. Real results, honest breakdowns, practical information you can actually use. Hit subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss what's coming. Let's start with the good news. These are the 5 plants that over-delivered this season, the ones going back in the ground next year without a second thought. Best plant number 1, sweet potato vine. I planted sweet potato vine to solve a problem. I had a stretch of compacted, poorly draining ground between raised beds where nothing else would cooperate. Too hot, too dry, too difficult. I put sweet potato vine in and gave it 2 waterings in the first 2 weeks and 1 side dressing of compost. That was it. By week 4, it had blanketed the entire area. By midsummer, it had spread beyond what I planned. Pests left it alone. The heat that killed everything else in that spot seemed to energize it instead. And when I dug it up in fall, sweet potatoes, real ones, smooth, firm, genuinely sweet. 2 full baskets with more to give away, from a plant I put in specifically because I had given up on that spot. The lesson? When you have hot, dry, difficult ground that nothing wants, this is your plant. It works best when conditions are hard. Put it in and let it cover the problem. Best plant number 2, basil. I grew basil at a scale I had never tried before. 6 containers of 4 varieties right outside the kitchen door, from late spring through first frost. Every single one thrived once I understood the one rule that matters above everything else with this plant. Pinch the flowers every time they appear. That day, not tomorrow. Basil that gets flowers redirects all its energy into seed production, and the leaves shrink, thin out, and go bitter. Basil that gets pinched twice a week doubles in size and branches out in every direction. I had more fresh basil this season than I could use. Pesto, dressings, infused water, cooking every night. The lesson? Full sun, warm temperatures, and consistent pinching before flowering is the entire formula. That is all basil needs. Do that and you will never buy it from a grocery store again. Best plant number 3, pole beans. I switched from bush beans to pole beans 2 seasons ago, and this year confirmed it is the right call permanently. Pole beans were the highest producing plant in my garden per square foot of ground used, and it's not close. They grow vertically. 1 square foot at the base of a trellis grows beans 6 to 8 feet in the air, harvested at a comfortable height continuously from June through September. Bush beans sprint, exhaust themselves in 2 weeks, and stop. Pole beans run a steady, generous pace all season. My trellis was a cattle panel bent into an arch over a 4-foot bed. The beans covered it in a month. I walked through with a colander every 2 or 3 days and came back inside with a full meal every time. The lesson? Limited space, maximum food, go vertical with pole beans. Build a real trellis before planting. Give them full sun, then your job is harvesting. Best plant number 4, zucchini. Zucchini is not on this list because it surprised me. Everyone knows what zucchini does. It's on this list because this year it never missed a single beat. No disease, no serious pest pressure, no production gaps during the July heat waves. 2 plants ran from late June through mid-September without stopping. 2 plants fed my household and kept a neighbor's porch stocked with bags of zucchini twice a week for 2 months. 2 plants is the right number. First-year gardeners always plant too many because zucchini looks like nothing in the beginning. It does not need company. 2 will outproduce your ability to keep up. The one technique that made a real difference, hand pollination during hot mornings. Above 95 degrees, bee activity drops in early morning, exactly when zucchini flowers are open. A small paintbrush from male to female flower takes 60 seconds and fixes every heat wave fruit drop problem. The lesson, plant 2, hand pollinate in heat, harvest under 8 inches for best flavor, and plan to give a lot of it away. Best plant number 5, marigolds. Marigolds are not food, but they earned a top 5 spot based entirely on what they did for every food plant around them. I planted French marigolds along the outer edge of all 4 raised beds and between my tomato and squash rows. Aphid pressure this year was the lowest I recorded in this garden. Whitefly population stayed minimal all season. I had 2 or 3 notable pest events across the entire growing space. In previous seasons without heavy marigold coverage, that number ran 6 or 8. The mechanism is real. Tag-eats patula releases root compounds that suppress soil nematodes. The scent repels a range of soft-bodied pests. The flowers pull in beneficial insects, and those beneficials handle the pest populations that make it through. On top of that, these plants bloomed from transplant day to hard frost without deadheading, filled every gap between vegetables, and made the whole garden look intentional. The lesson? Marigolds are infrastructure, not decoration. They go in the ground working and they do not stop. Plant them everywhere, every edge, every row gap, every bare corner. You will see the difference. Those are the 5 that earned their place. Now, the harder conversation. These are the 5 that underperformed or failed outright. Most of these failures are fixable. They come from wrong timing, wrong conditions, or a preventative step I skipped. That is exactly why they're worth sharing. Worst plant number 1, bell peppers. 3rd consecutive season of bell pepper disappointment. I have run out of excuses and finally have the real answer. I started them from seed in February, transplanted on schedule in late May, gave them amended soil, drip irrigation, and full sun. They grew beautiful plants, great foliage, sturdy stems, and then produced 4 to 6 small peppers per plant across the entire season. The diagnosis is heat-related flower drop. Bell peppers stop setting fruit when daytime temperatures consistently exceed 90 degrees. The flowers open, heat stress prevents pollination, and they fall before fruit can form. My beds trap afternoon heat in July and August, and the soil surface temperatures during those peak hours are significant. The flowers were dropping before they had a chance. Next year, I am moving peppers to a spot with afternoon shade from the fence line starting around 2 o'clock. I am also switching to a heat-tolerant variety bred for hot climate fruit set, not California Wonder, which was developed for far cooler production conditions. The lesson, if your peppers look healthy but carry almost no fruit, heat flower drop is almost certainly the cause. Afternoon shade in hot climates is not optional, it is necessary. Worst plant number 2, cucumbers. Cucumbers were strong until July. Then powdery mildew arrived, and in 12 days it had the plants completely. Most people expect mildew to need wet conditions. It does not. It spreads in warm, dry air, the same conditions that feel like ideal summer weather. By the time the white coating is visible on the leaves, the infection is already deep in the plant tissue. Treating after that point slows it down but does not save the crop. The fruit I harvested after the mildew took hold was bitter. Cucurbitin, the compound that causes bitterness, spikes under disease stress. The fruit looked fine from outside and was not worth eating. What I should have been doing, preventative spraying with diluted baking soda, 1 tablespoon per gallon, or neem oil, every 10 days from the moment vines start running. I skipped it because I was busy. I paid for it with the entire crop. Next year, I'm also switching to a mildew-resistant variety. Marketmore 76 and Space Master both carry partial resistance that significantly reduces severity. My heirloom has great flavor but zero tolerance, and that trade-off no longer works for my climate. The lesson? Spray preventatively before you see any sign of mildew, every 10 days from when vines begin running. Choose a resistant variety if mildew is recurring in your region. Treating after appearance is always too late. Worst plant number 3, melons. I gave cantaloupe the best bed in the garden. The vine was magnificent, 15 feet in every direction by August, and it produced one fruit, softball-sized, pale, barely sweet, harvested in September when it needed 3 more weeks I couldn't give it. 2 mistakes. First, I misunderstood what melons need from the season. They require 80 to 90 hot days from transplant, not from seed start, from transplant day. Consistent highs above 85 with warm nights. My June was cool. The vine lost weeks of heat accumulation it couldn't recover. Second, I didn't thin the fruit. Melons need to be limited to 2 or 3 fruits per vine. I let the vine carry too many at once. None of them got enough energy to develop, and they dropped off one by one until the plant settled on the only one it could finish. The lesson: count your heat days against your variety's days to maturity before planting. Thin to 2 or 3 fruits per vine. Plant through black landscape fabric to hold soil heat. If your season is short, choose a short season variety bred for northern gardens. Worst plant number 4, eggplant. I love eggplant. I want that on record. What happened this year changed my approach to transplanting them, not my commitment to growing them. Flea beetles found my transplants within 4 days of going in the ground. These are tiny jumping insects that punch pinhole after pinhole through leaf tissue with real efficiency. On an established plant, manageable. On a young transplant that is not hardened yet, devastating. The beetles can defoliate a seedling faster than it can regenerate, and that early season stress caps the plant's production capacity for the entire season, even if it survives. My plants survived, but never bounced back. Thin fruit set, undersized fruits, a stunted quality all season that I kept expecting them to grow out of. They didn't. The fix is simple, and I should have been doing it already. Row cover, applied on transplant day, not after you see damage, on the day they go in the ground. Flea beetles will find freshly transplanted eggplant within days by scent and sight. Lightweight, floating row cover excludes them completely while letting light and water through. Leave it on 3 to 4 weeks until the plant is large enough to tolerate some pressure. Then remove for pollination. The lesson? Row cover on transplant day, not after damage appears. The window between planting and beetle discovery is days, not weeks. Worst plant number 5, watermelon. Here is the plant I promised you at the start of this video. The one almost every American gardener has tried. The one that grows spectacular vine and almost no fruit and leaves people wondering what they did wrong. Watermelon. Here is the information that most garden content glosses over. Watermelons need warm soil, not warm air. Soil temperature at root depth needs to hold at or above 80 degrees consistently for fruit to develop properly. Planting into 65-degree soil because the air feels like summer weather is one of the most common mistakes in home gardens. The vine grows, the leaves look healthy, but the root system is suppressed, and the fruit will show it. They also need accumulated heat days. Most full-size varieties need 80 to 100 hot days from transplant to harvest. If you lose even 1 week to late planting or a cool start, that math stops working. And pollination is a single-day window per flower. Each watermelon flower is open and receptive for 1 day only. If a bee does not visit during that 1 day, that fruit set opportunity is permanently gone. During heat waves above 95 degrees, bee activity in midday and afternoon drops sharply. If your flowers are opening during low bee windows, you get vine and no fruit. This year, mine went in a week late due to rain, into soil that was warm but not warm enough at depth, in a season that started cool and gave me fewer heat days than the variety required. The vines were incredible in August. The fruit never had the runway to finish. The lesson? Verify soil temperature at root depth before planting.
80 degrees minimum. Plant through black landscape fabric to hold heat. Water deeply once or twice a week, not lightly every day. Hand pollinate early morning. And if your frost-free window is under 85 days, choose a short season variety bred for that window. Section 5. The big lessons. 5 lessons from this season that apply beyond my garden. They hold across climates, plant types, and experience levels. First, match your plant to your actual climate, not the one you wish you had. Every plant has specific requirements: soil temperature, heat accumulation, humidity tolerance. When your real conditions don't line up with what that plant genuinely needs, no amount of effort fills that gap. Research your climate before committing bed space. Second, prevention always costs less than cure. The cucumber crop lost to mildew, the eggplant stunted by flea beetles, the watermelon planted a week late because conditions weren't quite right and I pushed it anyway. Every one of those had a preventative step I skipped. Row cover, timely spraying, soil temperature checks before planting. Cheap, fast, and effective. Waiting until you see damage is always too late. Third, vertical production is the highest value use of limited ground space. Pole beans proved this more clearly than anything else this year. The trellis footprint was 3 feet wide. The production it carried was equal to a bed 3 times that size planted flat. Everything that can grow vertically should grow vertically. Fourth, complementary planting is not a theory. It produces measurable results. The marigold borders delivered visible, trackable reductions in pest pressure and meaningful increases in beneficial insect activity. Next season, that border expands to every available edge in the garden. Fifth, and most important, a garden that fails at something is not a failed garden. It is a garden that is teaching you. The season with the wilted peppers and mildewed cucumbers and the one softball melon is also the season that gave me specific, hard-won knowledge I will carry for the rest of my time growing. The failures are the curriculum. That is why you keep showing up. I'm already planning next season based on everything you just heard. This channel is where I document all of it. Every year I grow, I get better. Not because I stopped making mistakes. I made plenty this year and told you about every one. But because I pay attention, I write it down and I bring it back here and share it with you. That is the whole practice. That is nature and green focus. Real gardens, real seasons, real results, including the ones that didn't go the way I planned. If this video gave you something useful, one lesson you are carrying into your planning, one mistake you are now going to avoid, please hit the like button right now. 1 second and it genuinely helps this video reach other gardeners who came here with the same questions you did. If you're not subscribed, do that now. I post new videos every week. Growing strategies, plant deep dives, seasonal planning, content built for people serious about growing their own food. Hit the notification bell and drop a comment before you go. I want to know 2 things. What was the best plant in your garden this year? The one that refused to quit. And what was the biggest disappointment? The one that taught you something you didn't expect to learn. I read every comment. I want to hear your season. Thank you for being here at